Joe Walsh's life has been a saga of soaring highs and devastating lows. From an early fascination with music, sparked by his mother's classical training, to the heartbreaking losses of his father and daughter, Walsh's story is one marked by tragedy and resilience. As he battled addiction and rose to legendary status with the Eagles, he carried a profound weight that few could see. Now, at 76, Walsh is finally revealing the truths and struggles behind his rock star life, confirming what fans and friends have always suspected about his private battles. Stay tuned to find out. Joe Walsh's journey into music began under the shadow of both talent and tragedy. Born Joseph Fiddler Walsh on November 20, 1947 in Wichita, Kansas, music was more than a pastime. It was in his blood. His mother, a classical pianist, nurtured his love for melody from an early age. But his father's sudden death in a plane crash left a void that Joe and his mother would carry as they moved from place to place, eventually finding a stable home in Montclair, New Jersey. In Montclair, young Joe took his first concrete steps into music. At just 10 years old, he picked up a guitar, inspired by the sounds of rock and the energy of bands like the Beatles and the Ventures. While he dabbled in the school band as an oboe player, his true passion burned for the electric guitar, which became a channel for his emotions and creative spirit. As Joe grew, his path led him to Kent State University, where he started to imagine a life fully devoted to music. By this time, he was already performing with local Ohio bands, building his skills and confidence. At Kent State, he joined a band called the Measles, and not long after he became the lead for the hard rock trio, the James Gang. They quickly became a sensation in Northeast Ohio, opening for legends like Fleetwood Mac, The Who, and even Led Zeppelin. Yet the path wasn't free from darkness. On May 4, 1970, Walsh was at Kent State when a peaceful student protest turned tragic as National Guard troops opened fire, killing 4 and wounding many others. The event left an indelible mark on Joe's heart, reshaping his worldview. Already familiar with loss as a Gold Star son, his father, a flight instructor, had died while on duty when Joe was just an infant. The tragedy at Kent State further deepened his reflections on life and peace. Years later, on the 50th anniversary of that fateful day, Joe Walsh looked back, recounting the shock and pain of witnessing his classmates fall under gunfire. The memory was a reminder to him of the fragile balance between hope and violence. The echoes of that day would stay with him, influencing his music and his sense of purpose. With a weight of experience and a deepened perspective, Walsh eventually left the James Gang, setting off on a new chapter by forming the band Barnstorm with Joe Vitale and Kenny Passarelli. In 1972, after his time with the James Gang, Joe Walsh found himself at a creative crossroads. Rather than joining another established group or sticking to a single genre, he decided to carve his own path. Teaming up with his college friend, drummer Joe Vitale, and bassist Kenny Passarelli, Walsh formed a new band, Barnstorm. This was more than just a project. It was a bold exploration of sound, blending rock, folk, jazz, and even a touch of Caribbean flair. Their self-titled debut album that year marked a pivotal shift, revealing Walsh's talent not just as a guitarist, but as a composer who was unafraid to experiment. Although the album didn't dominate the charts, it found an audience that truly appreciated Walsh's daring creativity. Tracks like Turn to Stone and Mother Says stood out, showcasing his lyrical insight and innovative guitar work. For music fans, Barnstorm wasn't merely a band. It was a window into Walsh's evolving artistry and a space where he could push the boundaries of his sound. During this time, Walsh's talent began to attract the attention of other musicians, including the members of the Eagles, who would later become his bandmates. In 1973, Barnstorm released their second album, The Smoker You Drink, The Player You Get, which included the hit single Rocky Mountain Way. The song, with its unforgettable slide guitar and laid-back groove, became a career-defining moment, establishing Walsh as a solo artist to be reckoned with. Though Barnstorm disbanded in 1974, its influence on Walsh's career was unmistakable. The creative freedom he experienced in those few years with Barnstorm gave him the confidence and skills to evolve as a musician. This chapter was crucial in shaping the artist he would become, paving the way for his future success with the Eagles and solidifying his place in rock history. Just a year later, after the Barnstorm had disbanded, Joe Walsh found himself at a career high point when he joined the Eagles, one of the defining rock bands of the 1970s. His timing was perfect, aligning with the departure of founding member Bernie Leadon and the band's shift toward a heavier guitar-driven sound. Walsh brought a magnetic stage presence, along with unmatched guitar skills and subtle musicality that synced perfectly with the Eagles' evolving style. This partnership didn't just take the band to new heights, it also catapulted Walsh into global fame. Shortly after joining, Walsh played a key role in the Eagles' legendary 1976 album, Hotel California. His guitar work, especially in the iconic duel with Don Felder on the title track, became etched in rock history. The haunting riff of Hotel California remains one of the most recognizable solos of all time, capturing audiences with its mysterious allure. Another gem Walsh brought to the Eagles was Life in the Fast Lane. The song, born from a simple yet gripping guitar riff, grew into a massive hit that showcased Walsh's talent as both a songwriter and guitarist. It embodied the band's new, edgier sound, departing from their folk rock roots and moving towards a more intense rock presence. Walsh's commanding guitar work helped redefine the band's style, broadening their reach and establishing them as stadium rock icons. His adventurous spirit and creative flair energized the Eagles, strengthening his bond with bandmates Glenn Frey and Don Henley. Though the Eagles had already achieved success before Walsh came on board, his arrival sparked their most commercially successful and critically celebrated era. Joe Walsh joined the Eagles, just as the band's now iconic Hotel California was making waves worldwide. But behind the success lay a heartbreaking chapter of his life that few knew about. Just a few years earlier, in 1971, Walsh had married Stephanie Rhodes, and together they welcomed a daughter, Emma, in 1972. Their family seemed complete, but in 1974, tragedy struck. A reckless driver caused a devastating car accident that left little Emma with severe head injuries. Despite all efforts, she passed away that very night, leaving her parents in a sea of grief. Heartbreakingly, Joe was on tour when the accident happened, and he rushed home to face the unimaginable loss. The accident marked the beginning of a turbulent chapter for Walsh and his wife, Stephanie. Overcome with grief, their relationship began to fracture, ultimately leading to their divorce. For Joe, the pain of losing Emma was overwhelming, and he struggled to find a way through the darkness. He poured his grief into his music, creating Song for Emma, a deeply personal tribute to his daughter, released in 1974. In a 2016 interview with Rolling Stone, Walsh opened up about the enduring impact of Emma's death on his life. He confessed to feeling an intense anger towards God and the world, which fueled a so-what attitude that led him down a path of self-destructive behavior. Seeking solace, he turned to alcohol and substances, using them to numb his pain and shut out the reality he couldn't bear to face. Yet, amidst his struggle, Joe found a way to honor his daughter's memory. In North Boulder Park, he built a small memorial fountain as a tribute to Emma, a place of quiet reflection where he could connect with her spirit. Joe Walsh lived the rock and roll lifestyle to the hilt. Late nights, hard partying, and self-destructive behavior were all part of the territory. His wild ways, though, didn't stop him from achieving great success, even as he walked a razor-thin line between fame and self-destruction. But eventually, Walsh realized something had to change. No matter how thrilling it all seemed, his lifestyle was unsustainable, and he was heading toward a breaking point. The music industry has changed over time, becoming a bit kinder to those in it. But back in Walsh's heyday, things were very different. Hedonism was almost expected, and the relentless pressures of touring made alcohol and substances readily accessible. For many musicians, substance abuse became a rite of passage, and countless artists were swept into its devastating cycle. The industry lost so many talents this way. Some left this world far too soon, unable to escape the grip of addiction. Yet Joe Walsh did something rare in that world. He chose to confront his addiction head-on. His path to sobriety was challenging and complicated. No overnight transformation. In a candid 2018 interview with Billboard, Walsh opened up about how alcohol and white substance had become his higher power. a crutch that ultimately isolated him and brought out the worst in him. Anger and resentment took over, pushing people away and casting a shadow over his career. Like many performers, Walsh initially turned to alcohol to help him cope with stage fright. The idea of stepping onto a stage without it seemed terrifying. But in 1993, he finally made the life-altering choice to get sober. Though he worried sobriety might dull his creativity or drain his performance energy, he took the plunge. In his 2012 song, One Day at a Time, Walsh laid bare his journey, offering listeners an unfiltered view of the ups and downs of addiction. Reflecting on his struggles in a 2016 Rolling Stone interview, Walsh shared how, for years, he maintained a facade, hiding the toll his addiction was taking. Eventually, though, it became too much, leading him down darker paths, ending in a near-fatal accident. Hitting rock bottom might have been his saving grace, giving him the jolt he needed to turn things around before it was too late, a fate that, heartbreakingly, so many of his peers weren't able to escape. When Joe Walsh joined the Eagles in 1975, he brought more than just raw guitar talent. Known for his wild, unpredictable lifestyle, he was as famous for his hotel room escapades as he was for his music, leading some to wonder if he'd fit in with the Eagles' more relaxed vibe. Behind closed doors, the band had their reservations. They worried that Walsh's hard-partying ways might clash with their image, and eventually, his wild streak did lead to the band being banned from several venues. But there was no denying Walsh's musical brilliance. His guitar riffs, energy, and songwriting brought a new edge to the Eagles' sound. Years later, Walsh opened up to the Daily Mail, revealing that his antics weren't just a rock star phase. They were a mask for deep-seated insecurity. Standing next to legends like Glenn Frey and Don Henley, celebrated for their songwriting and vocal prowess, Walsh often felt like he had something to prove. This insecurity drove him toward reckless behavior and substance abuse. When the Eagles disbanded in 1980, Walsh's life took a darker turn. Without the structure of the band, his substance abuse spiraled, reaching a peak during his relationship with Stevie Nicks. Their connection became a destructive cycle of drugs and partying, and in time, even Nicks admitted that their romance was fueled by their addictions. It took the Eagles' reunion in 1994 for Walsh to confront his inner demons. Concerned about his health, his bandmates, especially Timothy B. Schmidt, urged him to get help. This reunion was more than just a chance to play music again. It gave Walsh the motivation he needed to reclaim his life. He embraced sobriety, a journey that he would later call the hardest battle of his life. Alcohol had convinced him that he couldn't cope without it, but the support of his friends and the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous helped him rebuild his life, one day at a time. Today, Walsh's journey to sobriety has become his defining story. Although he reached the heights of fame and success with the Eagles, it's his personal transformation that resonates most deeply. His involvement with the First Step to Recovery Treatment Center stands as a testament to his commitment to staying sober, a reminder that even rock stars can find redemption. Stevie Nicks, the ethereal voice and heart of Fleetwood Mac, once shared a story that mirrors the emotional highs and lows many of us have experienced, a story of love and loss. At the center of this tale is Joe Walsh, the legendary guitarist of the Eagles, whom Nicks has often described as the great love of her life. Their romance in the 1980s had the makings of a rock and roll fairy tale. Two iconic musicians, both at the peak of their careers, drawn together by a connection so deep that Nicks said she loved Walsh more than anyone else, more than her music, more than her career. From the moment they met at a hotel bar, sparks flew, and Nicks fell for Walsh instantly. Their love was intense, passionate, and all-consuming. But like many stories set in the whirlwind of fame, their relationship was complicated by darker forces. Substance abuse began to cast a long shadow over their time together. As much as they were bound by love, they were also united by a destructive lifestyle that slowly eroded the foundation of their relationship. Nicks has been open about this, admitting that their addiction issues made them lose sight of everything else. In the end, Walsh made the difficult decision to walk away. It was a heartbreak that left Nicks shattered. Healing was slow and painful, but she survived, carrying with her the lessons of that turbulent chapter. She poured her grief and devotion into her music, most notably in the song Has anyone ever written anything for you? A haunting tribute to the love they shared. Even after the dust had settled, Walsh looked back on their time together with a mix of tenderness and clarity. He described Nix not just as a lover, but as a soulmate, though he viewed their bond as more sibling-like, a connection forged by the chaos and pain of their shared struggles. Despite their deep love for each other, the weight of addiction became too much, and they eventually went their separate ways. Throughout rock history, supergroups have come and gone, often burning bright and fading fast. Some, like Cream, became legends, while others fell apart just as quickly, torn by egos and clashing visions. But Joe Walsh's early 90s supergroup, The Best, was different. They didn't reach the heights of fame or implode spectacularly. Instead, they simply vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind a brief and curious legacy. It was the early 1990s, and Walsh, known for his work with the Eagles, gathered a powerhouse team of musicians. This wasn't just any lineup. He joined forces with the likes of Jeff "Skunk" Baxter, John Entwistle, Keith Emerson, Simon Phillips, and Rick Livingston. They called themselves The Best, and with a name that bold, expectations were sky high. In September 1990, they headed to Japan for a short tour, performing songs from each member's iconic past. The setlist was packed with hits: Eagles' Life in the Fast Lane, Steely Dan's Reelin' in the Years, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Fanfare for the Common Man. The tour had its highs and lows, and critics were quick to weigh in. Rolling Stone noted that Rick Livingston, the only lesser-known member, struggled to keep up with the legacy of such iconic voices as Don Henley, Roger Daltrey, Donald Fagen, and Greg Lake. But despite any criticism, The Best had made a mark, even if only for a moment. In an age where technology has transformed the music industry, Joe Walsh decided to take a different path. For his 11th solo album, Analog Man, Walsh chose to push against the grain. Rather than embracing the polished, digital sound dominating modern music, he sought to recapture the raw, unfiltered essence of the past by returning to analog recording techniques. In doing so, Walsh wasn't just making an album. He was making a statement. Walsh's life in rock and roll is the stuff of legend. In the 1970s and 80s, he lived the rock star dream to its fullest. Wild parties, trashed hotel rooms, and a fast-paced lifestyle that echoed the excesses of the era. He became a symbol of rock's rebellious spirit. But behind the antics was a musician of extraordinary talent. His work with bands like the Eagles and the James Gang produced some of rock's most memorable guitar riffs and songs, elevating him to the ranks of guitar legends like Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton. Yet even with his success, Walsh's personal life teetered on the edge, as substance abuse threatened to overshadow his career and consume his health. By the late 1980s, Walsh found himself at a crossroads. The once glamorous life of rock and roll excess had turned into a nightmare. Hitting rock bottom was a sobering wake-up call. Walsh realized that if he wanted to survive and thrive, he had to make a drastic change. With immense determination, he embarked on a journey toward sobriety. The road was long and difficult, but it led to a personal rebirth. In sobriety, Walsh discovered a clarity and sense of peace that had eluded him for years. This personal transformation didn't just impact his life, it reshaped his music as well. With newfound sobriety came a deeper, more introspective approach to songwriting. Music became his therapy, a way to process his emotions and tell his story with brutal honesty. Analog Man was the result of this journey. It wasn't just a return to analog sound, it was a return to authenticity. The album, recorded with an impressive lineup including Jeff Lynne and Ringo Starr, reflected Walsh's renewed passion for the craft. While Lynne's clean production style shaped much of the album, Walsh made sure the music retained a raw, organic feel. He openly criticized the overuse of technology in modern music, striving instead for a sound that felt real and lived in. The themes on Analog Man are deeply personal. Gratitude, personal growth, and reflection weave through the lyrics, offering a glimpse into Walsh's mind as he grappled with his past and embraced his present. The title track, with its commentary on navigating a digital world, showcases Walsh's humor and insight, but it's the quieter moments on the album that reveal his vulnerability. Sobriety had opened a new chapter in his life, allowing him to write songs with a level of honesty and self-awareness that resonated with listeners on a profound level. In interviews, Walsh spoke candidly about how sobriety had not only saved his life, but had reignited his love for music. He acknowledged that, for a while, he had tried to keep up with current trends, but ultimately realized that what mattered most was staying true to himself. Analog Man was Walsh's way of honoring that realization, a record that embraced the past while being firmly grounded in the lessons of the present.